Archival photographs are a kind of window into the past. With their help, we can see not only historical events, but also the emotions and moments from people's lives that will never happen again, yet remain forever in memory thanks to the art of photography. In this video, I invite you to explore a collection of historical photographs, each of which has its own story behind it. Enjoy watching. Terry Fox, despite having his leg amputated due to cancer, carried out the legendary Marathon of Hope, running 373 kilometers across Canada in 143 days. Running a full marathon of 42 kilometers every day on a prosthetic leg, he raised funds for cancer research, inspiring millions of people around the world. In the end, he managed to raise over $24 million for cancer patients, and the charity he founded continues to operate today in more than 50 countries. In front of you is the famous photo of Marilyn Monroe's skirt billowing up. It was taken during the filming of the movie The 7-Year Itch on the night of September 15, 1954 at the intersection of Lexington Avenue and 52nd Street in New York. During filming, around 5,000 spectators gathered, reacting enthusiastically each time the actress's skirt flew up from the subway vent. To achieve the perfect effect, the crew did about 14 takes. However, despite the liveliness of the footage, the final version of the scene was reshot in a studio due to the chaotic atmosphere on location. On July 17, 1944, about 57,000 German prisoners of war captured during Operation Bagration marched through the streets of Moscow. The columns of prisoners moved along two routes. Along both sides of the columns, they were escorted by guards with rifles and cavalrymen with drawn sabers, while tens of thousands of people silently observed the historic event from the sidewalks. This event was called the Parade of the Vanquished, and its purpose was to clearly demonstrate the Red Army's success. These photographs depict a very unusual object known as the Willamette meteorite. It is the largest meteorite found in the United States and the sixth largest in the world, weighing over 15.5 tons. The meteorite was discovered in 1902 in the state of Oregon by miner Ellis Hughes. Interestingly, long before its official discovery, the meteorite was known to local Native American tribes. They considered it a sacred object and used the rainwater collected in its hollows for healing purposes. The first McDonald's restaurant in the world was opened in 1940 in San Bernardino, California, by brothers Dick and Mac McDonald. Initially, the place was called McDonald's Famous Barbecue and offered 40 different barbecued meat dishes. In 1948, the restaurant's concept was completely overhauled. The founders introduced a revolutionary assembly line kitchen system and started selling hamburgers for 15 cents a piece. This made the McDonald Brothers restaurant incredibly popular not only in the US, but around the world. This photo shows the favorite vehicle of the 36th President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson, the Amphicar amphibious car, produced in Germany in the 1960s. The president loved to entertain his guests by taking them on dangerous rides at his ranch. During these rides, he would pretend that the car's brakes had failed and would drive straight into a lake. Once in the water, the propellers engaged and the car kept moving, much to the astonishment and delight of his guests. On May 27, 1976, the last public appearance of the gravely ill Mao Zedong took place. On that day, he met with the Prime Minister of Pakistan. At this event, the extreme exhaustion of the leader was already evident. He could barely move, suffered from Parkinson's disease, and had almost completely lost his vision. These images became some of the last photographs of the once powerful leader of the People's Republic of China. In this photo, you can see the light aircraft of Matthias Rust, who on May 28, 1987, did something that people would remember for years. On that day, the 18-year-old flew from Hamburg, crossed the USSR border, and landed right on Red Square in Moscow. Initially, he planned to land in front of the Kremlin, but due to the lack of a long road, he was unable to do so, and instead chose the Bolshoi-Moskvoretsky Bridge. Rolling down to St. Basil's Cathedral on Red Square, he drew a crowd of excited onlookers and was then arrested. In the 1950s, an unusual device went on sale, known as the Orgone accumulator. The advertisements claimed that it allowed a person to attract a special healing energy. Psychoanalyst Wilhelm Reich, who proposed the concept of orgone energy, claimed that this blue-colored energy filled all space and influenced human emotions and health. Interestingly, some buyers were aware of the pseudoscientific nature of the device, but still chose to use it. This photo shows how the Bayeux reliefs on Mount Rushmore were created. We can see a worker manually sculpting the portraits of legendary US leaders. It is worth noting that the work on what is now a famous landmark in South Dakota took place at an elevation of about 1,700 meters above sea level and was carried out entirely by hand. In 1969, the USA and Canada decided to stop the water flow over the American Falls of Niagara for almost 6 months. This was necessary to study the stabilities of the rocks and geological composition. Around 28,000 tons of rock were brought in to build a temporary dam upstream. As a result, the American Falls turned into a small stream, revealing a riverbed filled with hundreds of thousands of coins left by tourists. This unusual period in the falls' history was captured in photographs, which you can now see on your screen. This photo shows Ahmet Ali Çelikten, also known as Arap Ahmet Ali. He became the first black military aviator in the history of aviation. He was born in 1883 in the city of Izmir, in the Ottoman Empire. After graduating from the Naval Technical School in 1908, he enrolled in aviation courses at the Naval Flight School. In November 1916, Ahmet Ali began serving as a military pilot, becoming the only black aviator of that time. His story became a powerful example of overcoming racial barriers in early 20th century military aviation. It might seem that in this photo, people are loading firewood into a truck, but in reality, this vehicle was used for other purposes. During the Prohibition era, bootleggers actively used disguised trucks to smuggle alcohol. Most often, they looked like ordinary wood delivery vans. These camouflaged vehicles allowed illegal traders to successfully bypass police patrols and deliver alcoholic beverages to various cities across the United States. This photo captures an unusual moment when a little Brazilian girl refused to shake hands with President João Figueiredo during an official event in 1979. The image became a symbol of childhood spontaneity and protest against the political system, although the true reasons behind the child's action remain unknown. Russian actress Olga Chekova, who shone in German cinema, was awarded the title of State Actress of Germany and became a favorite of Adolf Hitler. Thanks to her influence over Hitler, Chekova managed to protect Anton Chekhov's house in Yalta during the occupation of Crimea. In her close circle were not only Hitler, but other high-ranking figures of Nazi Germany. Many believed she was a Soviet spy and even discussed her alleged involvement in Hitler's death, but Olga denied all such accusations. The kitchen debate between U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon and First Secretary of the CPSU Central Committee, Nikita Khrushchev, took place on July 24, 1959. It happened at an exhibition in Moscow's Sokolniki Park, where the top leaders of the capitalist and socialist systems discussed important matters. This debate was recorded on color videotape, which was considered cutting-edge technology at the time. The video was broadcast on television in both countries. In the 1920s, the first electric hair curling machine appeared in beauty salons. It was created by German inventor Karl Nessler. The device was a bulky machine with electric tentacles that created stunning curls by heating the hair. Despite its frightening appearance, this invention became the predecessor of modern electric curling irons. This historic photograph captures the fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in New York on March 25, 1911. We can see firefighters setting up ladders that failed to reach the 8th to 10th floors where workers were trapped. This incident became one of the most horrific tragedies in U.S. history. During the fire, 146 workers perished, leading to significant changes in labor laws and workplace safety regulations. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. was the eldest son of U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. He proved himself to be a distinguished statesman and military leader, serving as governor of Puerto Rico and governor-general of the Philippines and taking part in both world wars. Roosevelt Jr. also played key roles in airborne operations in Africa and Normandy. In 1944, he died of a heart attack. His body now rests in Colleville-sur-Mer Cemetery in Normandy, but few know that he was originally buried in Sainte-Mère-Église. In 1920, a famous photograph was taken showing 8-year-old Samuel Reshevsky playing chess simultaneously against several experienced adult masters. The young prodigy played confidently and calmly against serious opponents, with only one of the games ending in a draw. The rest were won by the boy. This historic photo highlights not only Reshevsky's incredible talent, but also the amazement of the adults defeated by a child. In this photo, you see not just an ordinary monkey, but a unique baboon named Jack, who worked as a railroad signalman in South Africa under the supervision of his owner, amputee James Edwin Wide. Jack learned complex skills such as operating railway semaphores and switching tracks. He was eventually given official employment status with a wage of 20 cents per day. Amazingly, in his 9 years of service, Jack never made a single mistake in his work. This amusing photograph was taken on June 10, 1996 in Rostov-on-Don during an election campaign concert by photographer Alexander Zemlyanichenko. It captures the moment when the first president of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, dances on stage with singer Yevgeny Osin and 2 women to the song Yalta as part of the Vote or Lose campaign. The photo received wide acclaim and was even awarded the Pulitzer Prize, becoming one of the most memorable images of Boris Yeltsin. In September 1914, winemakers from the French province of Languedoc-Roussillon made a generous gift to the French army, 20 million liters of wine. The wine was delivered in special barrels, and the initial daily ration was a quarter liter, though this portion was later increased. Delivering wine to the front lines was dangerous, as the barrels and fires used for heating drew enemy artillery fire. Nevertheless, the drink was important for morale, and the winemakers willingly took the risk. The legendary photo of the Beatles on the Abbey Road crosswalk was taken on August 8, 1969 by photographer Ian McMillan in just 10 minutes, while police temporarily blocked traffic. Interestingly, the photographer took only 6 shots, and it was the 5th frame that was chosen for the studio album cover. This photograph became a symbol of a bygone era. This historic photograph captures the moment of a blessing for a French Blériot Esthétique-type aircraft before a combat flight on the Western Front in 1915. The image is valuable not only because it shows a chaplain performing a sacred ritual in the presence of soldiers, but also because it illustrates the early stages of using aviation in warfare, when airplanes were just beginning to play a significant role in combat operations. The famous photograph of Barack Obama with Joe Medicine Crow was taken on August 12, 2009 by photographer Pete Souza. The image captures the meeting of the 44th President of the United States with Joe Medicine Crow, the last living person born during a time when his people still lived traditionally and one of the last participants in the final battle between Native American tribes. At this event, the tribal chief was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. On February 20, 1939, a large-scale rally of the pro-Nazi organization German-American Bund was held at Madison Square Garden in New York City. About 20,000 participants attended the event. Photographs taken that day show the crowd greeting the organization's leaders with Nazi salutes in front of a huge portrait of George Washington and flags bearing the swastika. Interestingly, outside the building, about 80,000 anti-Nazi protesters gathered, trying to disrupt the rally, but the police prevented it. Sometimes archaeologists uncover truly unique objects, one of which is this loaf of bread. It was found during excavations at a bakery in Pompeii. Research showed that the baker placed the bread in the oven just before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. This photo shows Mary Ann Webster, who was born in 1874 in London. Mary was quite unfortunate in life, as she was labeled the ugliest woman in the world. The cause of her appearance issues was the development of acromegaly at age 32, a rare disease that dramatically altered her features. The woman had to give up her normal life and begin performing in freak shows to support her family. Despite all the hardships, Mary Ann managed to succeed in the circus and earn a substantial income. The last photographs of Freddie Mercury were taken in August 1991 in the garden of his home in West Kensington. In them, the singer poses in a floral shirt and light jeans. Freddie appears smiling and elegant despite the fact that his illness was already taking its toll. He deliberately chose the festive clothing to look good in the pictures. 3 months later, Mercury passed away. On May 8, 1945, in Karlshorst, Marshal of the Soviet Union Georgy Zhukov read the text of the Act of Unconditional Surrender of Germany in front of the officers and journalists present in the hall. After the document was signed by representatives of the German command, Zhukov officially announced the conclusion of the surrender ceremony. On the night of May 9th, announcer Yuri Levitan read the text of the surrender on the radio, informing the Soviet people of the victory, after which an order was issued for a celebratory artillery salute, 30 volleys from 1,000 guns. This historic photo captures the signing of the Lateran Treaty. It was taken on February 11, 1929 at the Lateran Palace, where Benito Mussolini, on behalf of the Italian government, and Cardinal Pietro Gasparri, representing the Holy See, signed these significant documents. This event marked the resolution of the Roman question and the beginning of the Vatican's existence as an independent state. It's hard to believe, but in the early 20th century, tourists were allowed to freely climb the peaks of the Giza pyramids. This photo, where travelers are having a picnic on the ancient structure, is proof of that. However, in the 1980s, climbing the pyramids was banned, as such activities caused damage. In 1962, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin accomplished the impossible. They managed to escape from Alcatraz prison. They were aided by papier-mâché dummies of human heads, which they made using wireframes, plaster, and soap. These masks were skillfully painted and decorated with real hair collected from the prison barbershop. The inmates placed the masks on their beds to fool the guards and create the illusion that they were asleep in their cells. Today, these unique papier-mâché masks are stored as physical evidence by the FBI, since the case remains officially open. This photo shows an unusual invention of the early 20th century, a firefighter suit equipped with the unique Koenig apparatus. It included a metal helmet with 2 corrugated hoses. One hose supplied air for breathing, and the other was connected to a sprinkler system that poured water over the firefighter like a shower. This system allowed firefighters to approach the source of the fire more safely, protecting them from high temperatures. The idea was interesting but not very effective, as the suit weighed over 3 kilograms and required 2 assistants to operate the air and water supply using manual bellows. This photo shows Fred Trump, founder of the company E. Trump & Son. His business focused on building affordable housing in the United States. Standing next to Fred in the photo is his son Donald. Together, they are inspecting apartment complexes built in Brooklyn. After Fred's death in 1999, Donald inherited a multi-million-dollar empire, estimated at $200 to $300 million. Today, this man is known as the President of the United States. In 1985, Xi Jinping visited the United States for the first time, beginning his trip in San Francisco, where he took a memorable photo against the backdrop of the famous Golden Gate Bridge. The purpose of his visit was to study American agriculture, during which he lived for a while with the Dvorak farming family in Iowa. This visit played a significant role in shaping his early impressions of America. Interestingly, years later, after becoming the leader of China, Xi Jinping visited the Dvorak family again, highlighting the importance of those early contacts for his career. Stefan Bibrowski was born in 1891 in Poland with a rare condition, hypertrichosis. Because of this disease, his entire body was covered with thick hair up to 20 centimeters long. When Stefan was 4 years old, his parents gave him to a circus where he later performed as the Lion Man. Despite his difficult life, Stefan learned 5 foreign languages and was a very educated person. He retired at the age of 38 and moved to New York, spending his final years in Berlin, where he died at the age of 42. In 1947, numerous posters could be seen at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee. They were created as part of the Manhattan Project, the American program for developing the atomic bomb. The goal of these posters was not only to inform lab workers about health risks from radiation exposure, but also to remind them not to disclose any details about the project to anyone. This photo shows 16-year-old Norma Jean Mortensen at her wedding to Jim Doherty in 1942. Only the most attentive and knowledgeable viewers will recognize in this young brunette the future iconic blonde Marilyn Monroe. The marriage was one of convenience. The girl didn't love him, but she wanted to avoid it returning to the orphanage. In 1946, after a successful start to her modeling career, Marilyn filed for divorce. The famous Unknown Rebel photograph was taken on June 5, 1989 at the northeastern edge of Tiananmen Square. The photo was captured by journalist Jeff Widener. From the balcony of his hotel, he saw a lone man fearlessly block the path of military tanks after the suppression of the protests and decided to capture the moment. The image became one of the most iconic photos of the 20th century, and the identity of the man in the photo remains unknown to this day. On December 1, 1969, a very unusual lottery took place in Washington, D.C., determining the fate of 850,000 American men aged 19 to 26. On live television, 366 blue plastic capsules with birth dates were drawn from a glass container. Those whose birthdays matched the drawn dates were among the first to be drafted for the Vietnam War. This event sparked strong criticism, and the system turned out to be flawed due to improper mixing of the capsules. These historic 1931 photos show moments when Al Capone is first seen sitting in a courtroom, then exiting the federal court of Chicago, accompanied by his lawyer Michael Ahern. Despite being convicted of tax evasion and violating prohibition laws, the notorious mobster remained completely calm. Moreover, unlike other gang members who tried to hide their faces under wide-brimmed hats to avoid press cameras, Capone confidently posed and looked directly into the lens. These photographs were taken on December 5, 1933. They show crowds of joyful people in bars. The reason for their celebration was that on this day, U.S. authorities officially repealed prohibition. After 13 years of a total alcohol ban, citizens were finally allowed to legally produce and consume alcoholic beverages, and that was certainly a reason to celebrate. Georg Hackenschmidt, known as the Russian Lion, was an outstanding athlete who became the first recognized world heavyweight wrestling champion and won the European wrestling title in 1898. He was famous not only for his impressive physical strength and conditioning, but also for inventing the bear hug wrestling move and popularizing the hack squat. After retiring from sports, he became a successful writer and philosopher, fluent in 7 languages. In historical photographs taken after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, we can see the aftermath of the San Andreas Fault's rupture. Some images depict abandoned horse-drawn carriages next to cracks in the ground, vividly demonstrating the scale of destruction caused by the shifting of the Earth's crust. Remarkably, these documentary images later became an important tool for Professor Andrew Lawson from the University of California, who used them to create displacement maps and study the nature of the earthquake. I think many of you remember the movie intros released by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. In them, we saw Ibyan and heard its roar, and in this photo, we see the very star of that intro, a lion named Jackie. Today, it may sound strange, but in the early 1980s, at some gas stations in Canada, including those in Ontario, Soviet cars, particularly models produced at the Volga automobile plant, were refused service. This was a form of protest against Soviet policies. Interestingly, not only Soviet-made cars were banned, but also, for example, Fiat 125 vehicles, which looked very similar to Soviet Ladas and were often mistaken for them. In this historic photo, we can see Henry Ford sitting behind the wheel of his first invention, the quadricycle, created in 1896. This historical image became a symbol of the beginning of the Ford Motor Company era, as it was with this experimental quadricycle that Ford's career as an automobile manufacturer began, eventually leading to the creation of popular car models. Few people know that the famous Hollywood sign, originally installed in 1923 as an advertising billboard for a new residential area, originally read Hollywoodland. Each letter of the sign was 15 meters tall. Over time, as the area gained fame due to the film industry, the sign took on symbolic meaning. In 1949, after serving its original purpose for nearly 20 years, the last four letters, land, were officially removed, transforming the sign into the now iconic Hollywood, a symbol of the movie industry. These photographs, taken in 1974, show Rolling Stones frontman Mick Jagger and German photographer and filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl. The images became the subject of much discussion and even criticism, as many people viewed her as an active propagandist for the Third Reich. In 1960, during a United Nations Security Council meeting, U.S. Representative Henry Cabot Lodge presented a unique listening device to the public, which had been discovered inside a wooden panel featuring the Great Seal of the United States. This panel had been gifted to U.S. Ambassador Averell Harriman by Soviet pioneers during the opening ceremony of the Artek camp in 1945. The device was discovered in 1952. Thus, for 7 years, the USSR had access to classified information from the U.S. Embassy. This incident undoubtedly led to an international scandal. In 1973, the famous paparazzi photographer Ron Galella was assaulted by Marlon Brando, who inflicted serious injuries during a photo shoot at a New York restaurant. After this incident, Galella continued to pursue the actor, but always wore a protective football helmet labeled Ron to shield himself from potential future attacks. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, New York City's Central Park was taken over by the homeless, who built an entire camp of makeshift shacks. It became known as Hooverville, named after President Herbert Hoover. The shelters were built from available materials: construction debris, cardboard, broken stone, and bricks. By April 1933, the area was cleared of shanties and transformed into a manicured space with flowers and lawns for public recreation. This photograph was taken on July 31, 1968. It shows President Lyndon Johnson leaning toward a speaker, trying to make out the sounds on a poorly audible audio recording sent by his son-in-law, Captain Charles Robb, who was serving in Vietnam at this time. It was later discovered that the recording was not meant for the president, but for Johnson's daughter, Robb's wife. Nonetheless, the image captures the president's deep emotional response. In 1903, Edward Llewellyn made an incredible catch by landing a black sea bass weighing 192 kilograms. The fisherman managed to pull the giant fish out on his own, setting a true record of the time that went down in fishing history. This catch is still considered one of the most impressive in the history of recreational fishing and stands as a testament to the angler's remarkable skill and strength. This historic photo was taken on June 28, 1997, after the infamous boxing match between Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. The image shows several security guards and police officers struggling to restrain the boxer as he attempted to charge his opponent after biting off part of his ear. This incident led to Tyson's disqualification, which was later lifted, and a fine of $3 million. The photograph became a symbol of one of the most scandalous moments in boxing history. Timothy Treadwell dedicated 13 years of his life to studying grizzly bears in Katmai National Park in Alaska. He regularly spent summers there, filming documentaries and observing the animals. To everyone's surprise, he often appeared close to wild bears during their hunts and even played with the bear cubs. Treadwell founded the Grizzly People Association to protect bears and their habitat and actively gave lectures in American schools, educating children about the lives of bears and the need to preserve them. Ironically, in October 2003, he was mauled to death by a bear. Few people know that during the filming of the flooding scene in Titanic, the filmmakers used an unusual technique. They turned a large model of the sunken ship upside down and mounted it on the ceiling. This decision allowed director James Cameron and the crew to more effectively control the underwater scenes of the legendary liner's disaster. This photo captures a touching moment in a hospital room where a nurse, holding a newspaper, is talking with a patient suffering from the effects of polio. The photograph conveys an atmosphere of care and support. Despite the patient's severe condition, the nurse tries to distract him from his illness by sharing news from the newspaper, which speaks about the invention of the polio vaccine. In this photo, you can see a Tasmanian tiger or thylacine. This animal was the largest carnivorous marsupial in the world, resembling a large dodo with characteristic tiger-like stripes on its back. Thylacines were nocturnal, hunted small prey, and had a unique ability. They could open their jaws up to 120 degrees and had more than 40 sharp teeth. Unfortunately, Tasmanian tigers were driven to extinction due to hunting. The last known individual died in a zoo in 1936 from exposure, and the species was officially declared extinct. And that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Your engagement is the best reward I could ask for. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.